props to you. You picked out Alliance as the series winners. They're not quite there yet, but that was an impressive performance. Even though at times it might have looked like they were behind, they were always in control.
Yeah, the scoreboard looked really one-sided, but once they finally pulled up the net worth, it was, whoa, they're actually way ahead in terms of gold, and it's because they're consistently farming. And it looked really adverse in the beginning. EGM died like 5, 6, 7 times, but if he's the only one dying, that's not that big of a deal if it's forcing 3 heroes to rotate, and the heroes that Na'Vi had just didn't transition very well. Timbersaw isn't going to turn from like big items into blowing towers up. It's more of like it just increases his survivability and damage, and it's kind of the same thing for Slaughter, especially when you go Tranquil Boots. You're not going to transition fast from a ganking hero into a carry. He just isn't going to do that.
Yeah, and we were looking at the Alliance draft, and we were like, it just looks like they have much more synergy. And also, I really like the way that they laned it. They decided to do this aggro-type trialing, force the Broodmother into 1v1 versus a Slaughter, and you saw the impact it had. Bulldog was massive in this game. 10-1 and 6, 6 slotted Broodmother, involved in all the fights basically, whenever he possibly could, after he farmed the jungle a bit just to have his certain items. But they sacrificed S4 a bit, and we were a bit concerned about that. At least I was in particular, just because of how much Na'Vi likes to put pressure on that mid lane with Seneko sitting with Dendi.
It was very different as well from the Fnatic game where they played Broodmother. It was on Radiant, safe lane. The difference was that Bulldog, after he took that tower, he just went back to the jungle, and he spent a lot of time there. So, and he didn't go Orchid as well. He went Midas into Echo Saber, a great solution against Egg, because he can stroll right in, get a free 2 hits, and then have good attack speed to clear out the Egg. And then he transitions to full damage items. I really like how Echo Saber doesn't force you to have to go a utility nuke item. It doesn't force you to have to go like Manta, something else that isn't that amazing. His build is the new Brood build, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And if you notice, Na'Vi was already playing on the back foot from the beginning of that game. Alliance made really smart laning decisions, and they put the Brood safe lane, and Na'Vi guessed wrong. They put the Timbersaw in their own safe lane, and later he was forced to rotate because there's no way Slardar can handle a Brood on his own.
Was it really that wrong, though? I mean, I feel like Na'Vi felt good about how that game was going because they just kept getting kills. There's a perfect example of the wraparound with Chen creeps, and there isn't that much Jakiro can do to stop that. Luckily, Artstyle did miss micro a bit here and leave himself up for a kill before he died, but they got so many kills in the off lane. Lodo was definitely pressured here. With that said, his CS was high, but...
Yeah, but it didn't start that way. Initially, it was Ditya Ra up there, so he had to switch lanes, which already put him behind. They did make the necessary adjustments, but if you notice on the CS, Alliance, like you guys mentioned earlier, Alliance is out farming them.
And coming out of the laning phase, Alliance's team fight is just so much stronger than Navi's. There's no way that Na'Vi can take a 5v5 straight up fight, especially when Alliance gets those BKBs. As soon as the egg drops down, unless it's in a perfect position, and this is pre-BKBs, it's just going to die instantly. We saw it happen multiple times, and I'm sure we're going to see it on the highlights in a few seconds.
Yeah, 15 minutes in, and as Perch rightly pointed out from the scoreboard, you'd think, well, Na'Vi are all over this, crowd getting behind them, cheering every kill. But actually, it's 6k gold down and 3 towers already before.
Yeah, this is probably the most crazy place for net worth there, is that the Dragon Knight who died, he was like 0, 4, and 1 or something like that. He had the same net worth as the enemy mid. That should not be the case. And it's just because Na'Vi wasn't able to turn their teamfight wins and their ganks into towers afterwards.
Well, there was a point where Na'Vi got that Aegis. They used that to push down the rest of Alliance's towers, and they had a pretty decent control over the game, but they got over-aggressive. They tried to push the Alliance's high ground when they weren't ready, and then, like you guys said, Alliance's teamfight is just way better. Loda got a great Chronosphere off, and they killed that egg incredibly quickly with the Echo Saber.
Yeah, here we see it.
Yeah,
it dies almost instantly. And that's when the BKBs are out, and they're just able to lock down one target and burst him down every single time.
Another example of Bulldog being an absolute menace in here as well.
Yep.
Aside from him, and he did have an absolutely immense game for someone who absolutely loves playing Brood, which is, in my opinion, disgusting, but nevertheless, he does love playing it. How do you feel like the Skywrath and the Jakiro fitted in and worked for Alliance? Do you feel like it was part of the plan, or do you feel like maybe it didn't work quite as well and they got away with it?
Skywrath was quite good. There was a couple clutch moments. Do you want to talk about that, Charlie? You thought he played really well.
Yeah, while Bulldog did have, amazing net worth and a lot of CS, I think the unsung hero here is really Ake. He had so many clutch silences on the right heroes. He got off his Mystic Flare that immediately bursted down key players like Dendi before fights got too prolonged. I think this moment right here forces the Phoenix back. There was that Roshan fight earlier where Dendi immediately gets bursted down by a Mystic Flare.
Yeah, I think my favorite one is when he's D-warding and there was an invisible Slardar. He pops in the sentry range and he instantly silences. With all that said about Ake, and he did play quite well from mid to late game, I felt like the MVP on Alliance that game was just Bulldog because of his farm rate and his item build and his progression. He was scouting out things with his spiders. He never fed them. This was really the losing fight here for Navi. They had an advantage. Well, I mean, they sort of had an advantage, but it's so difficult to high ground against Alliance's heroes. You have to worry about Chronosphere. You have to worry about Jakiro. Jakiro's really good at defending high ground.
Such a good
Same with
staff
Brood.
right there.
That egg dies so fast.
Instant egg death, and that's pre-chrono. So they're doing that without even having other heroes on Navi locked down. And that also is because Navi just doesn't really have that much like sustainable lockdown. It's the Slardar, which is guaranteed, even though Dendi did land pretty much every single shackle I think at this game.
Early, yeah.
It's just not really enough to save the egg, especially once those BKBs come out.
It was actually amazing how well the DK worked. I really thought, I was like, this DK is the problem. They're going to lose the game because they have DK mid, but he ate so many ganks. And then he got to the mid game and his net worth was weak, but as soon as he got a Blink Dagger and a BKB, everything changed. Yeah. He became the initiator. He locks down Dendi before he uses a Wind Run. They get the new combos without having to use Chronosphere, and that was the crucial thing. So the fights were still hard after they killed Wind Ranger.
Just Bulldog things after the game.
Oh, of course.
Just Bulldog things.
Broodmother.
Fine.
Like you said, he loves it.
Yeah. I had a chance to speak to Synderen in the first sort of 15 minutes of the game. Catch up with our old buddy from the panels, and obviously he's coaching Alliance right now, so quite a nice chance for me to sort of say, how are things? How are they? What did you discuss before you went in there? Obviously, I'm not going to share that, but in general, he said they're fine. They're very relaxed. They're just looking at it as another match. They have to. And interestingly, we were speaking earlier in the tournament, Charlie, about the fact that they had to kind of deepen their pool. We needed to see more from them. They were a bit too standard, a bit too two years ago. And we started to see that. Obviously, that was pretty crazy with the Jakiro and the Skyrath. And I was like, oh, that must be Synderen's influence. Actually, that was totally from S4 and Bulldog. That was nothing to do with Synderen. He said, no, that's one of theirs. They already had that one. They were ready for it. They planned.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. S4, a lot of people don't realize this about him, but he's a pretty deep theory crafter. Yeah. He loves thinking about like different things that work. He can come up with a lot of off-the-wall drafts that a lot of people just dismiss. He, along with Artur and Puppy, were one of the people in the old Secret that really came up with a lot of innovative stuff.
Yeah, innovative is exactly the right word I was going to use. Players are starting to return, as you'll probably hear the chants and the screams and the cheers. Alliance returning back to their booth right now. In terms of where they are, sitting quite comfortably now with that 1-0 lead, it's obviously a big plus, but they won't want to let this slip now. They want to make sure this is a 2-0. They can sleep well tonight, look forward to the rest of the tournament. How are they going to secure that, Fog?
They should just do this the same thing like we were saying, innovation. I think the innovation worked really well. They adjusted it. I feel like these heroes, maybe they were thinking about it a little bit before coming into the draft, but they pretty much responded to the way Navi was drafting in a perfect manner. I think that they should just keep doing that, and it's going to work out really well
so
for them.
You don't think they should return back to a more standard sort of expected lineup? Because it looked from the bans that we had from Navi that they were expecting the normal, they were expecting the Rubik to come out, they're expecting all the same kind of stuff that we've seen and got used to from Alliance over the last few weeks.
It's definitely a different draft, but I think it kind of has a similar type feel. Loda here is playing more of a harder carry, but at the same time, Void, he sets up a lot. And we did have we did have Bulldog playing the Broodmother, which is the carry transition. And they pretty much put a lot of eggs into the Bulldog basket. They put him in the short lane, and they were like, do your thing. And he did it. He took the tower, went to the jungle.
You've just started a new meme. It's going to be Admiral Broodmother from
Admiral Broodmother?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those things.
Yeah,
what about you, Purge?
I didn't think it was that much about the picks. I thought it was more the play style in reaction to Navi's picks. Navi didn't have heroes that transitioned into carry roles, so all Alliance had to do was sit back and farm. They farmed all game. They tanked some ganks on a Jakiro and on mid, and they just progressed to a point where their team fight was better because that was the draft they picked. It was Jakiro, Void, all those heroes super good at team fighting. So if Navi picks a lineup like that, that's very aggressive, that doesn't transition into a typical carry playstyle, then Alliance needs to do exactly what they did in that game, which is just farm.
Okay.
And in contrast, I think Navi could have won that game. They just have to, if they pick like that, they have to be very careful about how they initiate and how they start fights. If you dive in and Phoenix egg into like 4 heroes, that egg is gone. You have to be very careful about where you position yourself, how you go on those heroes. are you ready to take high ground or not? There's not a lot of margin for error. You can win with that lineup, but be very careful.
I feel like that's kind of the issue with Chen a lot of the times. You know, it's that margin of error is, you know, if you make those mistakes going on the high ground, it's going to punish you super heavily. And they didn't even come out great in the laning phase, which they really needed.
Yeah, that hero didn't really feel like it fit their lineup at all. It gave them a lot of gank pressure, but then you've got a Chen, and you're dealing with Chronospheres and Macro Pyres, which eat the creeps. It slows down the push. Like, if there wasn't a Jakiro, if it was a regular support, maybe Chen works there. And maybe if their AoE teamfight wasn't as good. But not against Jakiro faces Void. That just, I don't think that works very well.
You two picked Na'Vi out as your series winners. They've got a lot of work to do right now. They're facing elimination with the map down. Got to win 2 in a row now. How do they start off the second draft?